soon as the light comes on. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Joint Planning and Zoning Board and Board of Commissioners meeting of April 4th, 2023. I am Briggs Simmons, Planning and Zoning Chair. Prior to this meeting, announcements were posted and notices were sent to all board members, commissioners, staff, interested parties, and applicants participating in the meeting. I will now turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Serena Carthen to introduce and welcome the commissioners.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Douglas County Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Right now, we will ensure we have a quorum, so I'll start with District 1 Commissioner Henry Mitchell III.
Present.
District 2 Commissioner Kelly Robinson.
Present.
District 4 Commissioner Mark Alcaraz.
Present.
And I'm your District 3 Commissioner, so we do have a quorum, and I will turn them back over to you.
Thank you very much. Also, we have members of the Planning and Zoning Board. If you would confirm your presence when I call your name. Teresa Knowles.
Present.
Oric Curry.
Present.
Brandon Penniman.
Present.
Frank Payne.
Present.
And Kirk Nicholson.
Present.
We also have a quorum. Allison Duncan, our Planning and Zoning Manager, will introduce the county staff and Planning and Zoning staff present. Ms.
Great.
Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we have with us our Assistant County Administrator, Tiffany Stewart-Stanley, our County Attorney, Michael Coleman. We have Carla Pashedley on behalf of our Department of Transportation. We have our Senior Planner, Jaquel Johnson, and our Secretary of the Planning and Zoning Department, Kim Waters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is a reversionary clause that applies to each rezoning, and that is the applicant, the agent, or property owner has 24 months to vest the zoning change after the Board of Commissioners has granted approval. As far as tonight's procedure goes, I will conduct the public hearings. Planning and zoning staff will announce each application, followed by a full presentation on the application. The applicant or their representative and members of the public in favor of an application will be able to present their information. They will have 2 minutes per person for a total allocated time of 15 minutes to speak on behalf of an application. Members of the public in opposition to an application will be able to present their information. They also will have 2 minutes per person for a total of 15 minutes to speak in opposition to an application. After the opposition completes their input or the time has elapsed, the public hearing will be officially closed. At this point in time, the staff will clarify any points of the zoning case that the Planning and Zoning Board and Commissioners would like. If the staff is unable to present or satisfy the board's questions, the board will then ask the applicant for points of clarification. This is not a time for the applicant to represent their case. The Planning and Zoning Board will then entertain a motion. Our first agenda item tonight is the approval of the minutes of the March 7th, 2023 regular Joint Planning and Zoning and Board of Commissioners meeting. Planning and Zoning members, after reviewing the minutes, do we have any questions, comments, or changes on those minutes? Hearing none, I would call for a motion to approve.
This is Frank Payne. I make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 7th, 2023 meeting.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
It's Brandon Penniman, I second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion, Planning and Zoning Board? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All in favor of approving the minutes of the March 7th, 2023 meeting, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. Madam Vice Chair, the minutes of the March 7th, 2023 Planning and Zoning and Board of Commissioners meeting have been approved by the Planning and Zoning Board and come to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Board of Commissioners, we have just received the approval from the Planning and Zoning Committee regarding the March 7, 2023 meeting. Are there any updates, deletions, or additions to those meeting minutes?
No, Madam Chair.
If none, can we just agree by common consent to adopt those meeting minutes of March 7, 2023?
Concur.
Minutes accepted. Turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Our next agenda item, Mr. Johnson, would you present that for us, please?
Yes, good evening, P&Z Board and Board of Commissioners. The first applicant tonight is a Mr. Donahue Redmond, case S2023-19. Mr. Redmond is applying for a special use permit. Mr. Redmond is requesting a special use permit to allow a short-term rental located at 7513 Elderberry Drive, Riverwalk Subdivision, Douglasville, 30135. Before you, I have the zoning map of the subject property. As you can see, it is zone PUD with conditions. This is an aerial image of the property. Mr. Redmond's property is highlighted in red. This is a site plan / survey of the property. Once again, Mr. Redmond's property is highlighted. This is a street view of the subject property. And based on the zoning analysis performed by staff, Ms. Redmond does meet the zoning criteria for a short-term rental or a special use permit. And staff is recommending approval with the following conditions. The first condition being the applicant must keep good record keeping of renters, and if the house is to be rented out for a party, the law enforcement is notified at least a day in advance. The second condition is the applicant must upgrade the septic system if there are or will be more than 4 bedrooms as permitted with the original site plan. And that concludes staff's presentation of Mr. Redmond. Staff will now answer any questions, and I believe the applicant, Mr. Redmond, is here as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. At this point in time, I will open the public hearing on this matter. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application, including the applicant or the applicant's representative, please approach the podium. You would have 2 minutes per person for a total allocated time of 15 minutes. When you get to the podium, first thing, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Donahue Redmond,
And I'm Judy McClendon Redmond.
and our statement is as follows. And I make this statement in light of the fact that there has been some discussion in our community. And I am a previous member of the Board of Directors in our community up until January 30th. So I just wanted to be noted before any other comments are made that in January of this year, the Riverwalk Homeowners Association Board took action to establish a committee to review bylaws and covenants, to update them. Our bylaws and covenants were established in 1989. The board felt that they were outdated and needed to update them. The committee was established, and the committee has already begun to work on this. Our Airbnb was established in 2018, so we've been doing that for like 5 years. Understanding there was some discussion on the board, I submitted a letter to the board. The board reviewed my proposal for moving forward in a just and fair manner and provided me with a written statement on March 24th indicating the board's agreement to provide me with a temporary permit until after the Bylaws and Covenants Review Committee completed their work. Now, about us and our Airbnb, the message I sent to the board simply stated, Chairman, or his name is Eddie, he's the president of the board. I respect the decision of the Riverwalk Homeowners Association Board to enforce all of its covenants and bylaws, and I intend to abide by all of them. As you know, the board previously determined that the bylaws and covenants should be reviewed and updated to align with today's residents' needs and values. The review committee is underway and being led by Annette Harry, current vice president. Regarding the Airbnb rentals, Judy and I do not rent our entire home. We are there. Some of the concern was the fact that in Airbnbs and the message and what has been happening in Atlanta and other places, people come in, rent the whole house, have parties, things go haywire. We do not rent our own home. There have been no incidents, and being that we are there, there's not likely to be any incidents because if the music gets too loud or anything like that, we're there. We don't have parties. Most of our guests are mature, and when I say mature, I'm saying 35 years of age plus, and professionals. Regarding Airbnb, Judy and I, we do a lot in the community. We support a girls' mentoring program, a boys' mentoring program, provide college scholarships for graduating seniors in both mentoring programs. We do have activities at our home for the girls' mentoring program. We try to be a blessing to other families and friends who cannot afford a costly venue for sweet 16 parties, baby showers, wedding gatherings, etc. We provide a low-cost place to stay for visiting neighbors, relatives, and guest speakers for Love Christian Center Church, which is pastored by our neighbors. Because Riverwalk Homeowners Association is in the process of reviewing what the board has determined to be some outdated bylaws and covenants, I am asking the Riverwalk Board to provide Judy and I with temporary support of our special use permit request submitted with the Douglas County Zoning and Planning Office.
Okay. Your 2 minutes is up.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Seeing no one moving, I will close the public hearing in favor and open the public hearing in opposition. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application, please approach the podium. You would have 2 minutes per person for a total allocated time of 15 minutes. If you would, when you get to the podium, first thing, state your name and address for the record, please.
Dwight Isaacs, 6170 Sequoia Lane, Riverwalk subdivision. Good evening, everybody. Initially, when I came here, I was a soft no on this proposal. I just wanted to let the board know that after hearing Mr. Edmond and Mrs. Edmonds' thing, I have changed my vote to in favor. So just wanted to let them know that if they are going to be in the house, and I want to just make sure that that's what I heard, and that was clear, because I was trying to listen, but if they're going to be still residents of the house, I have no opposition to the motion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak in opposition, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Annette Johnson-Hurry, and I live at 5885 Pecan Grove Place in the Riverwalk subdivision. I serve as the vice president on the Riverwalk Homeowners Association, and I'm the person that Mr. Redmond was referring to. Mr. Redmond's request is in direct violation of our existing covenant. I have a copy if you like, or I can read the wording that's in the covenant. We have concerned citizens from the Riverwalk subdivision here in opposition of this zoning request being approved. And let me just read quickly what it says in our covenant. All leases by a lot owner shall be for a term of at least 6 months. No lease shall be less than the entire lot, not a portion, but the entire lot. No lease shall be leased by more than one tenant. No leases falling under or qualifying for Section 8 of the United States Department of Housing, Urban, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are currently convening to update our bylaws and covenants, but another board member will address that when she comes up as far as the petitions that we've received from residents in the community. I'm not sure they're going to be in favor of Airbnbs in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? And understand that this board, we do not enforce covenants. We are simply concerned with the Douglas County ordinance.
Hi, good evening. My name is... Good evening. My name is Maurice Hurry, and Good evening. My name is Maurice Hurry, and I live at 5885 Pecan Grove Place in Douglasville in the Riverwalk subdivision. And I'm here to present a sheriff officer's report that occurred back on January the 2nd of this year at 5:27 in the morning, where a resident, well, a person that was staying at the Airbnb of the Redsmonds actually drove across one of the neighbors' yard and knocked their mailbox over. And after that, they actually drove up the street and got into an argument, and it really woke up some of the neighbors. And so the neighbor that witnessed it and that called the police during that time couldn't be here. And so they asked me if I would present this information. So there was damage to the property of that particular residence next door to the Redmonds home, which was at 7503 Elderberry Drive. And so they were charged with criminal trespass and damage. And so there has been an incident there, and we definitely don't want to see more incidents like that. So that's why we're in opposition to the Airbnb in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Good afternoon. My name is Allison Tinsley. I live at 5855 Pecan Grove Place. I am a current member of the Riverwalk HOA Board of Directors. I also yesterday came down and delivered a petition from 82 residents of the Riverwalk subdivision stating and pleading with the Board of Directors to please do not permit this special permit. We do have a covenant in place. It does not allow short-term rentals, and the residents who have signed this petition do not want short-term rentals. They do not want an Airbnb in our neighborhood. At this time, I was only able to get 82 signatures, but we are looking forward to, since most of the people in our neighborhood have young children, they are out of town on spring break. Once they do come back, we are going to go out and get more signatures from the residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please approach the podium.
My name is Edward Tinsley. I also live at 5855 Pecan. I'd like to take exception to a comment that Mr. Redmond made. While he was on the board, being aware of what the covenants were, he violated the covenants. So I just want to make a clarification on that. The other item I want to comment on is that as a board, in my viewpoint, this is not a one-off situation, that this permit basically, if approved, is going to be considered as a foundation for precedent. So while you may be approving this one, I think, not from a legal standpoint, you're approving 151 for the other people in Riverwalk if someone so chooses. I also think that there should be some notice given to people who live in Tributary, people who live in Chapel Hills, people who live in Belmont, people who live in Hurricane Point. For in all of those situations, they have a covenant. Short-term rental is pretty much a standard feature or point in all HOA governing documents. So what we do here today, I think, has broader impact than what we're just talking about for Riverwalk. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Tinsley. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? I believe we have about 4 minutes left.
Good afternoon. I'm David Tapia. I live at 5903 Camellia Drive in Phase 1 of Riverwalk. I've been there for 23 years and was part of the board, HOA board, for at least 14 in different capacities, from president, VP. I was part of architectural control when Phase 2 negotiations with Van Zandt were taking place. And yes, we've updated those covenants several times to ensure that Van Zandt and the builders complied with what we want in that subdivision. The majority, as Allison stated, the majority of residents at Riverwalk, 82 of which we were able to get signatures for, because everybody's on spring break or traveling, are totally not only against a temporary rental, they're also considering asking us to totally stop rentals. We're having too many problems with the sheriff's department coming into the rental properties where there's some kind of disturbance or they've been called to. So what I'm telling you is short-term maybe will open up a Pandora's box in our neighborhood, a very good neighborhood. It'll lower the values of our residents' properties, and that's our investment, guys. You know, that's the biggest investment that we all have there. It will introduce, or can introduce, criminal element into our neighborhood. And we've got kids, we've got, you know, a lot of property there that we just don't want that type of, those types of people there. And short-term rentals do not allow us to really control who and what is going on in there. So Riverwalk Board, the 3 members that approved this, had no right to do that. There is a covenant in place. That covenant, unfortunately, Mr. Redmond violated that covenant as a board member, and the one function of a board is to enforce our covenants and make sure that they run a fiscally sound subdivision.
Okay, that takes care of your 2 minutes, sir.
I'm going to take 1 second. We respectfully ask the zoning to not approve this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Like, we have about 1.5 minutes left. If you would state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, folks. My name is Keith Carson. I go by Kit. I'm a retired deputy sheriff from Douglas County. My home is in Riverwalk subdivision. I care what happens there. And if you okay this bed and breakfast, it's commercial. You might as well put a 7-Eleven on the corner. This is my life. This is my home. Please say no.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. Anyone else? Seeing no one else moving, I will close the public hearing on this matter. Before we move forward, Mr. Redmond, would you step up, please? You heard Mr. Johnson's presentation and the conditions that he had recommended if this passes. Are you in agreement with those conditions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Planning and Zoning Board, you have heard the comments. Do you have any questions of the applicant or of staff?
I'll ask the applicant a question, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
How many bedrooms are in the house?
With respect to the Airbnb, as I said, we do not rent out our whole house. It's only our lower level, which is the basement, 2,200 square feet approximately, with 1 bedroom.
How many bedrooms in the entire residence? I think that's what she was asking.
Okay, I'm sorry. In the entire residence, let me, 6.
6 bedrooms.
Yes.
I think one of the special conditions references the septic tank being upgraded if you have more than 4 bedrooms. Is that the way I understood it?
Yes, it was.
That is correct.
Any other questions, Planning and Zoning Board?
I didn't hear the answer. Did you understood that condition?
Yes.
If you have more than 4 bedrooms, then you'll have to upgrade your septic tank, I believe, is the way it read.
That is the way it read.
And you're in agreement with that?
Absolutely. We've actually done that. I'll have to check the records and see what the records showed, make sure the records show the upgrade that we did a few years ago.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Redmond, while you're up.
Okay.
Did you rent this out before, haven't you?
Since 2018.
Since 2018. Have you had any problems since then?
We have had no problems, and the accounting of what happened in the sheriff's report was not accurate.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions,
Mr.
Planning and
Redmond,
Zoning Board?
Before you, some of your previous board members brought up that at the present time you were on the board when you was Airbnb and renting out your prospective property.
Correct.
During that time frame. Now, I know that they said that there was, out of that many years, one incident, allegedly. So what do you feel about that situation where you had that you were sitting on the board and knew that that there was a covenant in place that prohibits the renting, Airbnb of the property?
I was on the board. I was not aware that the covenant actually applied to Airbnbs. The covenant was developed in '89, and it did not specifically call out Airbnbs.
Well, I just want to add that we were not aware that this was against the covenant. Our president at the time was Annette Hurry, and she came over to our residence to see our Airbnb because she said she was interested in doing it herself. So at the time, I'm trying to figure out if she realized that this was against the covenant, why wouldn't she have told us that this was a problem? Because she came over and took a tour in our house to see what was going on and to see Airbnb because it was her words that I want to do this myself. So to me, as a friend and as a neighbor, if you know that's wrong, she would have come and told us because we had no idea that we're looking at a lot, and that's what we have. We don't rent a lot. We just rent a room.
Okay.
Any other questions, Planning and Zoning Board?
Okay, Allison, can you come up real quick? Or not Allison, but, yeah. The question is, have we already approved any other, because I know that some of them have already talked about being an HOA community, and based on some of the covenants that's in there, have we approved any Airbnbs or special use permits for short-term rentals in HOA covenants? Maybe Allison can speak on that.
I'm not entirely sure that we have approved one with the HOA. To the best of my knowledge now, I will say no. However, I can find that information out for you.
Okay.
Right. I would agree with Mr. Johnson. I don't know that I could recall off the top of my head how many we've approved. I would say we've approved altogether less than a dozen of these special use permits for short-term rentals in neighborhoods. We have had incidents where when the zoning sign has gone up and we have notified the applicant, if the HOA brought to our attention that there was a potential conflict with their covenant, we have made applicants aware of that and they have chosen to withdraw. So we have had that situation occur. But generally speaking, we perform our analysis, as to whether or not it is something that is in compliance with the criteria of our code. As we've said before, we don't enforce covenants particularly. And so we really leave it to the community, to the HOA, to the neighbors to come forth and speak in regard to an application when it comes to these types of issues.
Okay, so how did it come on the radar for, because they already been doing this since 2018, how did it come on the radar for a special use permit for a short-term rental at this time?
So with the analysis of our third-party software, Granicus, I found that Mr. Redmond was running an Airbnb, and I did reach out to him. I did send a letter, and he did come in, and he said he did want to come in compliance with the code, and he applied for a special use permit.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Mr. Brandon Penniman, I got a question for the applicants, please. So you said you've been running this since 2018. Aside from the one incident that one of your neighbors mentioned, has there been any other incidents that have been reported or that you're aware of in the 5 years that you've been operating?
Not that I'm aware of.
None at all.
Okay, all right, awesome. And then last thing was, are you guys ever planning to have like long-term rentals where you have somebody in there for months or more than 30 days?
No. Most of our guests have been 2 days, a week, and 2 weeks.
We've had some nurses from Wellstar. We had the meteorologist from New Orleans when those storms were happening there. And at Wellstar, the nurses were on long-term duty, which was like 2 weeks or so, maybe 2 weeks and 2 days. And then we've had some guys that worked for Google. They came there, and they were about 2 weeks, so that's about the most.
And just for the record, you did mention that for a predominant portion of the, when people are there, you're at the residence as well, like you're upstairs while they're downstairs, or?
Absolutely.
That is our permanent residence, yes.
So you guys plan to stay there, don't plan to rent this out long-term?
No, we would never rent this out long-term. I'm in agreement with some of what has been said by the community with respect, if you open up a place for Airbnbs and it's a vacant home and they have the run of the home, it's hard to control. So we don't do that. We control what we have. We have professionals primarily to come in. We don't rent out where there's going to be a party. Most of the time when there is a holiday, Airbnb will not even allow that to come to us because they suspect that they're going to have a New Year's Eve party or Christmas party. It's just going to be big and wild.
And that is the criteria we've set. We only want professional people to come to our home, people that are working at the hospital or people that are doing the filming and movie industry. Those are only people that we've asked. That's the criteria we've set with Airbnb.
Okay. All right, thank you. Last thing, I just want to make a general comment. You guys are good. You can sit down. I just want to make a general comment, just for the record. One of the things that I can't speak for anybody else on the board, but one of the things that I dislike hearing from any community member is to hear somebody referred to as those people. It can come off as very rude and very biased. So I just want to make that for the record, that it can come off very rude if somebody refers to an individual because of their economic status as those people. With that, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Any other comments, Planning and Zoning Board?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Redmond, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say, and I don't know if I heard it correctly or not, did you say you have rented it out for birthday parties, Sweet 16 parties? Is that what you said, or you said you do not allow parties?
Those were not rentals. Those were friends who, we established this place in our basement to be a blessing to others. And so when we have friends who want to have a Sweet 16 party, they can't find a venue, we allow them to use ours. A baby shower, we will allow them to use ours. So this is not just a money-making kind of thing, because what we charge is not even the standard. We charge a low price. So this is not like we just have to do this to make money. It's more to give back, one way to give back to the community and be able to, and for it to be able to sustain itself.
So when you've allowed your home to be used for those parties, did any neighbors complain about the number of cars parked on the curb, or did any neighbors complain at all about that?
Our neighbors, and just to show you who we are, our neighbors have never complained.
To you, or to?
To us or anyone else that we are aware of. And I will tell you, we have had college groups to come down and park with a bus of kids and get off and come into our home. And there were no complaints. So we've had a lot of things going on there since 2018, no complaints. And the one incident that was reported to the sheriff, the information was incorrect because what happened, I, in my car, left the next morning and saw my neighbor doing something to her mailbox, had passed, turned around to find out if I could help her. And that's when I found out that somebody had run over her mailbox the night before. And I asked her, oh, okay, well, about what time was that? She told me. I told her I would look into it because in our neighborhood, we have the flock system. So we know all the license plates that come in and go out, and I'm on the board, so I would have access to that. So what I did, though, she told me about one time, she told what time it was. She told me it came down from the cul-de-sac, which is where I live. I went and looked at my cameras, my security cameras, and I determined that around that time, I saw a guest leave, okay? And so then I queried the guest. The guest owned up to it, and the guest actually paid for it. So everything was above board, and that's who we lease to, people that are upstanding. Nobody's trying to get over. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll throw it over to the Board of Commissioners for questions from you folks.
Thank you. Board of Commissioners, you've heard the staff report and you've heard from the applicant. Are there any questions?
Yes, Vice Chair.
Commissioner Elkins.
Mr. Britton, I know you keep getting, getting up and down. I just have a few questions for you because quite a few has already been asked of you. So you've been doing this since 2018. You weren't aware of the stipulation that you were not allowed to have a VRBO, but it was brought to the attention, and then it was brought to your attention. So then you came in and you applied for this application. But knowing your covenants that you have, I mean, us as a board, you know, we're not here to or to modify, as you even stated earlier, that you know, it could open up if we do one. If we do this one, I guess my concern is, and it is a concern of yours, that if anybody else in the neighborhood moves out, that this is approved for you now that it's going to be, it won't be able to be stopped throughout the whole subdivision. And you guys have a community pool, correct?
Yes.
Are your guests allowed to use the pool?
The answer is no.
All right, I'm sorry, let me rephrase my question. Have you allowed any of your guests to use the pool?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'm sorry, just a comment here from just what you said.
And by the way, that's not outside of the covenant. Our guests are allowed to use the pool.
Sure. I've been to a gathering over there before, so yes, sir, I'm aware.
Okay.
The college groups that you had in, you were just renting out that one basement. You had a bus full of college kids in the basement?
That was not a rental. That was our association from North Carolina where we lived, and we were involved in the community there. That included college kids, an organization preparing tomorrow's children for today, where they took college tours. And they came through Douglasville. And since we were here, of course, we invited them over. They came over. And there were no incidents, nothing. But it was not a rental.
They only came over for the service tonight.
Okay.
There was nothing, we had attended church for the afternoon, and they came, we invited them to church. The busload of 50 kids came to church, and we invited them over for ice cream and cake afterwards. So that had nothing to do with Airbnb.
Yeah, no, just the way it sounded, you just when you mentioned about the college students, and I'm thinking one bedroom. And I didn't, you know, it just didn't, you didn't mention it was just for that short period of time. It just kind of like you allowed a whole bus full of kids. I was thinking, well, I'd like to know how they all fit in that
I
one
think
bedroom.
his point was just the fact that we had a tour bus in the community that came and pulled up in our driveway and brought 50 kids over to visit us. It's just to show our reputation with the organizations that we take part of. They came to North Georgia and they wanted to visit us, so I think that's the point he was making.
Okay. All right, and you plan on, at any time, you don't plan on selling your home anytime in the future?
Not that I'm aware of.
We have no plans to sell our home, and again, we would never use that, we would never rent that home out exclusively. I don't believe that a home that size needs to be rented out because it would be taken care of.
Right, we own 4 rental properties, and this one will not be a rental because the size of this house is just not, as Donnie said, conducive for rentals. We see how it is with our 4-bedroom rentals. We won't do it with the house larger than this.
Okay. All right. That's
Just to
all.
clarify,
Yes, sir.
one of your questions, and I'm trying to remember the first question you asked. Oh, you asked the question about would we be establishing a precedent if we had a special use permit here? And I would say no, being from the board previously, every application that comes in should have to get approval. If this was approved, it could be approved on a special basis, almost like a grandfather basis. And I'm speaking about the Riverwalk board now, which means that anybody that comes afterwards, they would have to have approval as well. It would not open the door for anybody and everybody to come in. Now we are rewriting the bylaws and covenants. We are allowed to put stipulations in there so that you cannot come in and do an Airbnb, renting an entire home out. There are a lot of options that we have. We just need to sit down and work through those options.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions I have, Madam Vice Chair. I yield.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Got him. All right, so I'll keep this quick. I'm a big proponent. I'll make a couple comments. I'm a big proponent of HOA education. This year will be my 8th annual, and while it started perhaps in one district, it expanded countywide because it's important. You know, again, we understand what you're saying. We're legislators, right? So but our job is not to regulate you, right? In other words, think about this: the feds to the state, states to county and cities, and then within us, there are you guys. You have your own constitution, your own covenant. Right? Our job is not to regulate that or help you with voids in your code or how you guys work that out. There's a thin line. But the board can make its choice. Now, I personally do believe in, you know, as chair of economic development, I believe in Airbnbs. I supported our software to go and find, you know, people are making money in these communities and they need to be taxed. It's like the state. Next statement, HOAs are a state issue. They're not a local issue. We couldn't regulate you if we wanted to. Which is my first question to Manager Duncan. Right now, we have roughly, what, 962 subdivisions in our county. I've got 248 in my district alone. And we're trying to get our minds around these HOAs versus non-HOA communities, because think about from where we sit. We're going to honor the local, let you honor your own place, you regulate yourselves. But we got to be consistent. Right, now how do we balance this? Now I get it. Now our job is not to get into that, but I'm just curious. So Ms. Duncan, as opposed to how many we approved Airbnbs have we approved in HOAs, my question is how many have we approved countywide this year, or last year, better yet?
So
roughly.
Roughly, I would say since we have invested in the Granicus software, which was in March of 2022, we have probably issued about 10 permits at this point. We are aware of about probably another, 70 or so properties.
70 or 17?
70. And we will start with the renewal of the software that was just undertaken. We will actually turn those properties over to code enforcement. As Mr. Johnson indicated, we have written them nice letters, you know, saying, hey, we need you to come in and come into compliance. For those who have not responded to those letters, we will then turn them over to code enforcement, and we will let code enforcement go out and issue citations for not coming into compliance voluntarily.
Got you. And just a couple more statements. And I do get, you know, we've got, you know, housing and affordability and trying to help people and coming up with creative housing options. And this board is aware of this phenomenon of Airbnbs, as well as those developers that are coming in and they're doing just straight leasing of homes and subdivisions, straight renter models, which has a potential to undermine our overall digest. We're very aware, and we're clear on that. But we're trying to balance it, right? It's a balancing act, and typically we allow home rule, which is obviously the governing commissioner to sort of drive the lean on this. But this is interesting to me because again, it could create a precedent. But again, there's grandfathering, but that's not our job to regulate. So Allison, what is your recommendation? What was the recommendation on this?
So on this application, the staff recommendation is to approve with conditions.
Okay, can you read the conditions one more time?
All right, thank you. The conditions are the applicant must have good record keeping of the renters, and if the house is to be rented out for a party, that law enforcement is notified at least a day in advance. And number 2, the applicant must upgrade the septic system if there are or will be more than 4 bedrooms as permitted within the original site plan.
Okay. So again, I appreciate this. You're recommending approval. I need everybody to listen. Staff is recommending approval. There's nothing that prohibits this. However, as a board, we, again, sometimes the governor allows us to have home rule. It's like, okay, I know we could do, but I'm gonna let y'all work it out. Same thing here. There's nothing that prohibits us per se, and it's gonna be between this planning and zoning's recommendation and the board of commissioners. But this is an interesting one. I can't get into the dynamics of your board. I get that. I mean, it's just not the time and place for this. but it's duly noted. And I see this is not like a traditional, but yet I get it. It's always a tough choice sometimes, and it's our discretion. And it is democracy, it's not a dictatorship, but I thank you for that. That's all I've got. I just wanted to make my statement. Now you've answered my questions. Madam Chair of the committee, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the Board of Commissioners?
I have one,
Commissioner Mitchell?
and I was really trying to get the attention of Michael Coleman, our attorney, so just, let's give him a little time. You can probably come up here and probably speak, or at the podium, it doesn't matter. Okay, that's fine. And while he's coming, though, just to the applicant, while he's coming, oh, okay, well, he's here now. He didn't think it was moving that fast. So Michael, so even if, could we override the covenants by local legislation, a local ruling with a special land use permit to allow this when it's clearly stated, as I was reading, that it's not allowed in this subdivision? I'm just curious, legally, where that puts us, or can you speak to that, or is that something you need to take offline down the road?
Well, legally, I think we have consistently taken the position that it's not within our scope of authority to regulate covenants. The covenants are between the homeowners association and the residents. And as a group, as a government, we can't regulate that agreement. It's really like a private agreement. So I don't think we have the authority to regulate or enforce the covenants that would be between the homeowner and the residents.
So in this point of potentially a special land use permit to allow short-term rental, it clearly states in the covenants that's not allowed. How would that work?
Well, I think that, you know, there are certain factors that, you know, we must consider in making zoning decisions. They're pretty well spelled out. And I think looking at the analysis by the staff, they kind of went through what those factors were, and they were all satisfied. So those are the factors that we can consider. If there is deemed to be some violation of the covenant, then, you know, I think that would be between the homeowners association and the resident as to the enforcement of that covenant. They would have the right, for example, to take some private legal action to enforce it if they thought that was the appropriate thing to do.
So if hypothetically approved, this would be more of a legal matter at that point in time with the HOA and or the citizens or residency in that particular area? Or is it, I'm trying to make sure I get my head around this.
Sure.
Because I'm reading one thing, and I hear the request and the citizens on another hand, and I hear the applicant loud and clear.
Right.
And I'm a true believer in property rights, but I'm trying to make sure I understand this potential. You know, it seemed to me like it's going to be a huge problem. It's going to be problematic in the end, depending upon the outcome, I guess I should say.
Yeah, unless the parties are able to work something out, I mean, it may be necessary to, for there to be some court decision about whether or not covenants have been violated and should be enforced. That's typically how that would be enforced in a court of law. It wouldn't be for us. Now, what I have not looked at, and we certainly can look at, is whether or not we could amend the code, our code, to provide for, you know, the right to base a decision on whether or not it reaches a covenant. I'd have to look at that.
Right.
I don't know that we can really even do that anyway, since it is a private agreement, but there's a possibility that we could look at that, but that would require some, you know, some research, and then if decided that we could, it would require an amendment of the code.
And you see, it's very problematic, more than anything. And I don't know in the end what the outcome is. Not should we or could we do this? And I know I'm not looking for a response. I'm just thinking out loud.
No, I understand.
Yeah. So, okay. Thank you. Any legal thing that you can add to this or not? This is interesting. I mean, I deal with a lot of HOAs. I've been around, and as Commissioner Robinson stated, it's been an ongoing process when it comes to HOAs, how they deal, what they deal with, and there's some that are active with the state, some that are not. And I don't know, it just...
Yeah, I don't know if the parties, i.e. the homeowners association and the resident, if they've engaged in any type of mediation.
Mhm.
But there may be some, third-party mediator that might be able to assist in forging a resolution to the dispute between them.
Good thought.
And that could include, certain conditions that might be, imposed to allow it if the parties could agree upon such things. But absent that type of, resolution between them, between the parties, we have to decide whether or not our rules would prohibit them from doing it, and if our rules do not, but it is still a violation of homeowners association. The homeowners association still has a right to enforce.
Right.
Regardless of whether our rules would allow it or not.
Because I can see that.
I
I can see that happening. Let's say it hypothetically passed, and then the applicant or the homeowner is now fined by the HOA until they kind of come to some resolve, and that could be ongoing and long-lived, and here we are, deep into the legal system of this, and the only ones who walk away happy are the attorneys.
That's right, and I'm, even though I'm a lawyer, I do not.
Okay, I mean, no offense,
That's okay.
no pun intended.
I love lawyer jokes, by the way. So, but even though that's the case, I mean, I don't encourage litigation like this because it's expensive, and at the end of the day, even if you win, it's going to cost money, and you're not going to be able to get it back.
Right.
So, it would be, it may be that the parties, if they had some type of formal mediation before a third party, they could work out their dispute. But if the homeowners association covenant is there, and it says what it says, whatever, if we decide that it's permissible here, then it doesn't change the fact that it violates the covenant.
Correct.
The covenant, again, being an agreement between the parties as opposed to.
That they signed on when they started
bought the
living and
home.
coming into that
Yeah,
subdivision.
that's right.
That they agreed upon.
That's right. Now, I don't know how many people read the covenants before they.
No, they don't. I
Most
sell
people
enough real
don't.
estate to know that they don't. We just I got the keys. I'm moving on to the next one.
In fact, I was sitting back there thinking to myself, I better go look at my covenant.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Coleman, I appreciate that. Thank you again. And now to the applicant, if you will, please. Just only one. I'm just curious. How long were you on the HOA from, I'm assuming, when you built and or came to that residency, Riverwalk, or you kind of?
I was on 2+ years. Just over 2 years.
Got it. And clearly, I can probably say maybe you didn't or didn't know that this part of the covenants exist that talked about short-term rental.
That is correct. Didn't know, but trust me, all of my board members did know that we had an Airbnb
Got
for the
it.
2+ years.
Got it. Because you've been doing this, from understanding, since 2018, if I'm not mistaken.
And members of the board have known since 2018.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. On that note, I'm going to yield back, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Robinson, you have the floor.
I'll be real quick. And this is important. Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell, for triggering. The board is, again, we've been committed to this HOA thing for a couple of years. Part of our local legislation that we tried to work out based on these HOA boot camps was that you're trying to balance a board of directors, a covenant against the average citizen. All right, and so it's assumed that you're going to regulate yourselves right, because there's the other side of this. You've got HOAs that basically are putting liens on people's property and heavy-handed. Now, for us, we can't get away with that. That's like us doing that on your property tax. There's rules for foreclosure. There's rules for doing that. So I'm glad and encouraged to hear that you're updating your bylaws and bringing them more contemporaneous and bringing them forward. So again, one more time, we try to, stay in our lane in essence. Y'all are state chartered, but we're looking at this, but we're trying to say, okay, guys, well, do you have annual meetings? Do you share your financials according to your bylaws as leadership? Do you do those things to give balance and equality? It's supposed to be democracy versus dictators, and so I'm listening. I'm like, this is good. Again, we're very seasoned at this, so this is more of an educational. One of the last things that we are working on, we got our Chief Judge, Bo McClain, last year, and we're bringing it forth in this year's legislative package. It's the very thing our county attorney just said. In other words, no, y'all don't want to sue. That's a civil matter. It has nothing to do with the board. That's civil. Take it up over there, across that court. But it's expensive. And so we do have, he said, look, that's just a decree. Bring it forth, I'll just sign a decree, and it will encourage you to go to mediation before you try to file the Superior Court. Because you are neighbors. Where are we going to war over our neighbors? Right? Why? And so there's a way, there's got to be conversation, there's got to be communication. So I'm just putting that out there for balance. Again, we got to get out of the covenant conversation because that's not what we're here for. The board needs to make its decision, planning, zoning, and us on what action we're going to take. So that's all I want to bring that forward. I yield. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. What I did hear, Mr. Rittman, if you'll come to the podium. What I did hear was that your HOA is in the process of updating the bylaws. Do you know when that will take place?
It has already began.
It has began. Do you know how long the study or the committee will?
The process will take, no, I do not.
Okay. Are you opposed to tabling this matter until your HOA, and of course you are a voting member of the HOA because you've paid your dues, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So since you are a voting member, would you be opposed to tabling this until you all can work out what your amendment will be?
I'm not sure what you mean by tabling. If tabling,
Meaning bring this matter back before us after you have actually, after the board has actually gone through and amended its bylaws. Because if in fact you guys do amend it for Airbnb, then you bring this back before us and we don't have to worry about litigation or the types of things that we're talking about because you guys are neighbors. We're all neighbors here in this community. And so I would rather you guys have an amicable way of doing this as opposed to us voting it up or down and then you and your neighbors having a dispute. You get what I'm saying? So if you table it, you can bring it back after you guys have settled it, right? And we will hear it again. Are you willing to do that?
well, does tabling it mean that we delist our Airbnb? Because we have contracts out there now, months away. So, and it's a contract.
Get you. I would refer that to Ms. Duncan to answer. Yes.
So in regard to your suggestion, I would have a couple of thoughts on that. We could certainly work with the applicant if it was the will of the board and the applicant was agreeable to move in this direction. We could certainly work with him to honor any existing contracts that may be in place, but have a condition to not allow any new contracts to be entered into. I might also suggest not being sure what timeline the board is working on to update their covenants. I would not want to necessarily have this tabled indefinitely, so perhaps it would be more appropriate to have him withdraw his request. The board may suggest that his fees be refunded in full for his application, and then he refile at such a time that the board has finalized whatever update to the covenants is being undertaken, and that the understanding is that he may honor any contracts that are currently in place, but he will cease and desist offering this as a short-term rental until such a time as he can bring it forward for the special use permit. Would be what I would recommend as a way that we could proceed with your suggestion if the applicant is amenable. Leave it. But he's saying no.
So you are not amenable to that, Mr. Donahue?
I am not amenable
Redmond.
to delisting our Airbnb, knowing that the board is undergoing a study to update the bylaws and covenants. because what that does is impact me and no one else. And this is a form of short-term, this is a form of supplementing our income. We're both retired, and this is a form of supplementing our income. So this would impact me, the recommendation would impact me in a tremendous way. So now, I have already given a statement to the president of the board and each member of the board, as a matter of fact, and my recommendation was that we go through this process of reviewing the bylaws and updating them, and at the end of this process, if it is so determined that we need to delist at that point in time, I would adhere to the recommendation of the committee and the board, because whatever is done is going to have to be approved by 2/3 of the community. So if the community says, no way, Jose, it's done, we're done. Sorry, we're done.
Understood.
And that was my recommendation to the board, to the Riverwalk board. The president said that they had a vote, and they voted to accept that recommendation. And the president told me it was unanimous.
I'm sorry, one second, please, no outbursts while we're doing the hearings. Thank you.
The president conveyed to me that it was unanimous. Now, if it was not unanimous, even at that, it would have been 3 out of 5.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
You can have a seat. At this time, I will yield back to you, Chairman, Planning and Zoning.
Thank you very much. Planning and Zoning Board, you've heard the discussion. Do I have a motion on S 2023-19?
This is Frank Payne, and I recommend approval for S 2023-19, a request for a special use permit to allow a short-term rental located at 7513 Elderberry Drive, Riverwalk subdivision, based on the conditions and findings of staff.
It's Brandon Penniman, I second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving S 2023-19 as stated with conditions and findings, please indicate by raising your hand. All opposed? Motion dies. Madam Vice Chair, I'll pass it over to the Board of Commissioners with a denial of S 2023-19.
Thank you. Board of Commissioners, you have heard the motion from the Planning and Zoning Committee to deny application S 2023-19. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve or deny the application S 2023-19.
Madam Vice Chair, I would like to make a motion to table this for 1 month, to doing so for the parties to go back to negotiate their new, what they're restructuring in regards to their covenants, because we are not here to legislate, we can't regulate, we cannot modify or enforce covenants. I would like for the parties to go back and try to work this out themselves. So I'm making a recommendation or a motion to table S 2023-19 until our May meeting.
That's going to be May 2nd, just to
May
get that
2nd
in the
meeting.
record.
So I have a motion to table agenda item S 2023-19 until the May 2nd date. Is there a second for this motion?
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of tabling this? Is there any discussion regarding this matter? Commissioner Robinson.
Yeah, I appreciate the spirit of this, and I just, you've got the applicant that's in play. And we're tying a decision to them working on a study, so I'm implying what the board would do. He's already in play. I don't know how long it's going to take them to do their study and not do their study. We live this all day long. I'm still waiting on my HOA report. All right, so my listing. So I take it serious when I apply this all the way through. And I can see it's like, okay, but let me just clarify. Is the condition of tabling that he continue on as is until the legislative branch of the community makes it, completes their study, you know? I'm asking, was that part of, I'm clarifying for Commissioner Alvarez. Take the, please, sir.
Yes, he can continue on until our May 2nd meeting.
Okay. And at that time, if they got a committee or not got a committee, if they've done the study or not done the study, it's not relevant. That's not really, you're giving room. I get it, right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so really right now we're asking, do we table it or do we take a position? All right, I yield. The motion is on the floor. I yield.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second to table application S 2023-19 until the May 2nd Planning and Zoning meeting. All in favor? With the condition that the applicant can continue to run his Airbnb until the May 2nd date. All in favor? Raise your right hand. We have a 4-0 unanimous vote to table this matter S 2023-19, and I will turn it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson, would you present our next item, please?
Yes. Our next item is Z2023-20. Our applicant is Ashley Daughtry. Ms. Daughtry is applying for a rezoning. The applicant is requesting a rezoning from CG, General Commercial, to CH, Heavy Commercial, for retail flooring sales located at 7297 Lee Road, Lithia Springs, zip code 30122. Before you, I have the zoning map, the highlighted parcel. Before you is CG. There's heavy commercial with conditions to the south, and to the east, you can see that there is a heavy commercial, and just to the north is general commercial. Before you, I have an aerial image of the property. It is highlighted before you. This is a site plan / survey of the property. Before you, I have the street view of the property. As you can see, it has 4 units. Before you, I have looking south on Lee Road with the subject property on the right and a office on the left. And before you, I have a photo looking north on Lee Road at the intersection with Sweetwater. To the left is the subject property. Just in front of that is Ace Hardware. And based on the zoning criteria, it does meet the criteria. Staff is recommending approval with the following conditions. The applicant shall submit to the Developmental Review Committee, DRC, for the review and consideration the specific site development and access management plans to address the development standards in the UDC and the concerns and requirements expressed in the specific agency impact statements reviewed in the staff report dated April 4th, 2023. And that ends my presentation. Staff, as well as the applicant, is here for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. I'm now going to open the public hearing on this matter. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application, including the applicant or the applicant's representative and general public, please approach the podium. You would have 2 minutes per person for a total allocated time of 15 minutes to speak in favor of the application. Please state your name and address for the record first.
Yes, my name is Ashley Daughtry at 110 Osterley Way in Dallas, Georgia. It's really I'm a third generation flooring store. My grandparents started in Douglas County in 1988, and then we've been in Cobb County for 13 years, and we're really just a small store that tries to give access to the community. We have very low overhead, so it helps us be able to give affordable options to the community, and it also allows us just to continue our small family business. So just want to continue that.
Okay, thank you very much. If you would just stand by. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application, please approach the podium. Seeing no one moving, we'll close the public hearing in favor and open the public hearing in opposition. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application, please approach the podium. You would have 2 minutes per person for a total allocated time of 15 minutes. If you would, first thing, please state your name and address for the record, sir.
David Shaddix, 7316 Groovers Lake Road. I have been living in that residence for 33, 35 years. I have seen a lot of buildup in that area, and the area that he showed you a picture of, where no cars are around, there's nothing like that. I've waited 10, 12, and longer to get out of that section right there, because at quitting time, that road, it backs up all the way. And if any of y'all in Lithia Springs, she's shaking her head, yes, she knows that. The impact, I live directly, if you show that plot again, that, I don't know if he's got it or somebody's got it, but my whole property on the backside butts up to that property. And it needs to have a buffer put in for the trucks and the traffic and the people that are coming in. I've been in the construction business all my life. I know how long it takes, and when the installers want to pick up their carpet and so forth, they get there early, and sometimes they don't come in till late. And without a buffer, we're going to be listening to all the their forklifts with their beep 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 all day long, moving the carpet coming in, flooring coming in, and this is just a small group. I've got Jeff Ullum. He also, there's several of us that weren't able to make the meeting tonight. We're all opposed to this. Like I said, there should be a buffer zone put between us and all the line, on the backside of that line where there should be some kind of fence. There's no vegetation there, so they can't have a 50-foot, natural buffer, so they need to build a buffer. There's also, many of us, many generations have been living in this area, and we've seen Lithia Springs up for grab the last year and a half. And I'm sure y'all noticed that in your permits and all that. We're getting inundated. I'm getting, backed up against mine. I don't want to hear, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, your 2 minutes is up.
Oh, well, okay. Can I take somebody else's 2 minutes?
No, sir.
Y'all are going to be making taxes off this property and all that.
Sir.
And in the meantime, you're gonna go ahead and devaluate our property since it's up against commercial.
Okay.
There's several other things here. I'll let somebody else.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Can I respond?
No, ma'am.
No.
Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
My name's John Humphrey, 7328 Groovers Lake Road. I live kind of behind it to the corner of the property. Wasn't you at Crossroads this weekend? Mm-hmm. Good job, brother.
Thank you.
I'm not for it, against it. I'm all about progress and improvements. What we're worried about is water runoff and truck noises and stuff like that. We've been behind those properties forever. That's all business behind. We're like the buffers for the other neighbors, the newer neighborhood across the street. We're like a buffer, and honestly, I wish our property could go commercial, and that whole island up through there could be, commercialized, but we're worried about water runoff, and like Ace Hardware, we used to get big rats that come up there from the hay and the feed they had up there. We would get big rats in our yard, and I haven't seen none of those in a long time, but we're just worried about stuff like that. Water runoff, the sound, the buffer. Our properties are down in a hole so anybody on that property can just look right down at us. If there was a fence or something there, that would help, But I'm all about progress, but just do it right,
Okay. Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address for us first.
Louise Bullock, and I'm 7312 Groovers Lake Road. And we hear all the noises from the trucks going in and out. I feel like our property gets the buck of the back of the commercial stuff because we have had big rats to come in, had to do, just a lot of stuff to keep that stuff away, the noises. So I do feel like that we are a buffer for the other neighborhood, but it does affect us. I hear the trucks come in early in the morning, and it wakes me up, and it wakes my dogs up, and then I have to get up and, take care of them because of this. So even if they could put up, like you said, a fence or something to block or to make sure that the water don't run down because of the property is up here, but ours do come down this way. So that means that the water and everything will come down towards our property as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing no one else moving, I'll close the public hearing in opposition. So the public hearing on this matter is closed. Planning and Zoning Board, you've heard the discussion. Do you have any questions of the applicant or of staff?
This is Brandon Penham. I got a question for the applicant, please. Hearing the concerns of your neighbors and other community members, are you amicable to putting any form of a buffer up or considering the runoff and all those factors?
I think that everybody is not understanding how small of a business this is. You're looking at Ace Hardware, and Ace Hardware definitely has crazy amount of traffic that goes in and out. I'm sure they have tractor trailers. It's not like that. I have a guy that goes to pick up in a truck and a trailer on Tuesdays in Dalton at the mills. He comes in a truck and trailer once a week. And it's not a tractor trailer. It's just a regular, box enclosed trailer that fits maybe 10 rolls on there. So he comes in that once a week. I have one, we don't even open till 8:30. So 8:30 to 4:30, we're there. The guys might get there 15 minutes early in the morning. They don't even come back. They go to the job and then they leave from the job to their home in the evenings. There's only 1 to 2 crews that I work during the week. I do sell some out the door, but it's just to regular people that are doing a basement that they want to just lay a piece of carpet in or something. So it may just be a small piece in the back of a pickup truck. It's probably a tenth of the traffic that comes from the tire place or Ace Hardware. So it won't be any early mornings. Like I said, 8:30 to 4:30, there's no water. There would be no water runoff at all. We don't clean carpet. All we do is install new carpet. We take it out of homes, put it in. So there's no water other than us washing our hands. I have one other lady that works with me in the office. So I run the forklift. She runs the forklift. We don't have a forklift crew in the back. I sell the carpet, I get on the forklift, I load it, I unload it, me and her. So it's just us washing our hands in the toilet. There's no water that would be coming anywhere.
Awesome. That's a great explanation. I think that's great for them to know. Now, in regards to putting a fence up, I understand that it's very minimal, but if that was the difference between making your neighbors more at ease, would you be willing to put some form of a fence up or some way to help buffer that in-between space?
Right, and I could talk to the business owner. I'm not the property owner, so I can't give 100% that he would allow that or that we could come to an agreement on that.
Yeah.
But there's not any noises. We're not zooming around like Amazon, beep, 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 get out of the way. You've got 2 30-year-old females on forklifts. One of them, there's only one forklift we're going to be running, so there's no beeping, there's no loud noises. They're propane forklifts, so they're not loud anyways. It's minimal. There's not going to be any noise
But at the end of the day, you would consider asking the owner about that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. That's the biggest concern for me, is just acknowledging what your neighbors are saying and how they're feeling about it. Other than that, I yield. Thank you.
We just want to be an addition to the neighborhood. We're not trying to cause anybody any issues, so.
Excuse me, or Curry, real quick. So you're just only going to be having carpet? It's no tile, it's no linoleum, it's just carpet?
We do sell sheet vinyl, yes, and the luxury vinyl plank, which is a tile composite, no
Okay.
hardwood, no ceramic tile or anything like that.
So it's just basically, okay.
Just
Okay.
cosmetic, that's it.
Just cosmetic,
Mhm.
okay, all right.
I have a question. The building itself, how many spaces are there?
It actually looks like there's 4, but there's only 3, and I think the building in total is like 10,000 square feet. We only are gonna take up about 7,000 of
You
that, so.
operate on the one, the other ones are they vacant?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I've never seen anybody out there, so maybe.
Okay.
But there's no signs that I'm aware of that say any names of businesses, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hardy, I have a quick question. So you're only going to be renting 1 space out of 3, correct? So you have no influence, no control over what goes on the rest of that property? Whatever's
No.
there is there, whatever's been there for years has been there?
Yeah, I don't think there's been anything for years there, though. I think it was a lawnmower repair place, something to do with Ace, and it's been vacant for a long time. They were gonna put a grocery store in there, but it didn't have the plumbing or the septic system, and I think the road right there was an issue. I mean, if it was a grocery store, you would have people in and out. So there's not a lot of businesses that would really work there with the traffic and the community the way it is, so.
But your application is for the entire parcel to be rezoned, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Quayle next, if that's.
Any other questions, Planning and Zoning Board?
I do, Jaquel, I need to ask Jaquel one. That's fine. So in this case, to rezone this, is it possible DRC will force some sort of buffer, or some sort of landscaping buffer, or something to go up, or?
DRC what would trigger DRC if she was to expand the footprint in any shape, form, or fashion?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
If she were to expand the footprint of the building
Right.
in any shape, form, or fashion, that would trigger DRC and that would require her to come in.
So there's, in this case, it's a rezoning, they're not going for a building permit, therefore there would be no reason for it to go for DRC, is that correct?
That would be correct. However, the board is well within their right to apply any conditions as you see fit.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Daugherty, I have one for you. You heard the condition that was read in by Mr. Johnson. Are you in agreement with that condition?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I will pass it over to Board of Commissioners for any questions you folks may have.
Thank you, Chairman. Board of Commissioners, you have heard staff and you have heard the applicant. Are there any questions?
Just a couple.
Commissioner Mitchell, you have
Just a
the floor.
couple. So, say again, can you hear? Is that what it is? We got it, we got you. Okay, so to the applicant, to the applicant. Okay, so your footprint, it appears to be small, and the activity, even with traffic, appears to be small based on the conversation that you're stating. Because I'm trying to understand from what the residents and others are saying, and their fear of the runoff, and I guess that would be more of an Allison question with the fear of runoff, that would be triggered and or caught through WSA and others, correct? Or, okay, so I'm just trying to relieve some of the things that are being stated about what it could be. From my understanding, hearing you, your plans are to run a small carpet type of a business, a family business that's been going on for.
88. It was in Douglas County on Maxim Road, and then we moved to
yes.
Cobb County.
Yes,
We've been there 13
I
years.
did my basement. I got some carpet from you guys.
Dalton Carpet Connection.
Yes, right. Okay. Now with that, to staff and what kind of impact that we would possibly note, see, consider? I mean, because I can't get my head around anything much more than that. And I'm gonna get back to you, though. I want staff to kind of
Okay.
chime in. Don't go far. No.
So in the case of this building, this is an old building, like we
Correct.
talked about. And as Ms. Daughtry had actually indicated, we have talked to people about a lot of uses in this building over time. The site has challenges. It's constrained by its position near the right-of-way. It's constrained by how much distance it has on it. It has some issues with the existing septic tank on the property. So we've had a hard time as applicants have come to us saying they want to put a certain use on the property and making it fit within the constraints of the existing property. As Mr. Johnson had indicated in his staff report, if it is the intent of the applicant to come in and just use the existing building, the existing footprint as is, that doesn't trigger a review through DRC. It's when they start making changes to the property that's when we start getting into things like having to possibly look at connecting to sewer, having to possibly look at the existing footprint of where the fencing is, and if the current fencing is on the right-of-way and things of that nature. So in regard to the staff recommendation to approve, we do think that the proposed use is a good fit for this building, but we do recognize some of the concerns about this building may have outlasted its useful life in this location. And any additional improvements that are either needed as the applicant starts to retrofit the space, or any additional conditions that would require improvements that are placed on it by the Board of Commissioners does go to DRC. It does trigger any additional improvements that DRC are going to require at that time, because again, we do recognize that we need to do our due diligence in bringing these older properties up to compliance with current standards.
Right, and I know that that building is in interesting shape. And with that, though, I just want the applicant to also note that these types of trigger mechanism are in play that would require that if by chance we went beyond the scope of what we're speaking of now, this could be interesting when you get there and only realize that you can't do all of what your vision may be based on the mere fact of that building, because it's been there for a very long time.
If
Yeah.
there are conditions you are contemplating, once again, you would have the option to table this. We could go to DRC. We could talk about what some of those issues could look like, with buffers and things of that nature. We
Right.
could actually go with our chief building official out to the building and make investigation if you would like a little bit more information on what that would look like. Ms. Daughtry will be again on the May application for a special use permit, because this use required rezoning and special use permit. So she will be back again in May, and if you would like to take that opportunity to have us make further investigation into this, because this will be before you again in May, that would be one possible solution to consider if you would like a little bit more information about what all that could entail if you were to start conditioning site improvements and send it to DRC, so it would have a more fulsome picture of what that would be. But as is, having her just move into that space and occupy that space would not necessarily trigger a DRC review and all of the attendant site improvements.
And that would be more the applicant who might want to either say yay or nay to something of that caliber, but it does make sense to try and make sure that no other trigger mechanism happens, because that building is it's going to need some work. And will it fit what you're doing? I think so. But the long range, I don't know, what you'll need to do down the road when you kind of get this thing going. And if that triggers that and you've vested into this, and now you've got to invest dollars to expend, bring it up to par, that may become interesting. But thank you, Allison, again. And applicant, if you would please come up again once again. So I know with all that being said, and I'm not trying to deter you from this or not. I don't know if there's a timeline in your frame of mind of what you want to get done and when you want to get it done. But I do hear Allison loud and clear that it might be that you might want to make sure you see all the potentials that you may have versus surprise when you get there on May.
Well, I've looked at the building, and we don't need anything special. I
Okay.
mean, all we need is a bathroom for us to use and an open space with concrete floors, and that's what it is. I mean, we
Got
don't
it,
have to
yes.
do anything. It doesn't have to have any walls. It doesn't have to have anything.
Right.
It's already has LED lights, so there's not anything that we would have to change at all.
Okay.
There's
got
no
it.
water issues. I mean, literally, we're not making carpet.
Right.
We're not cleaning it,
I
we're just
know.
washing our hands.
Right, right. I get it. And so you'll just rather or prefer to wait and see in the end what comes up at your special land use potential in May, I guess it is.
May the 2nd, yeah.
Okay. All righty. What else I had here? Let's see. And Allison, you would say, based on your recommendation, that this is the highest and best use for that structure, where it exists, and what potentially that she'll be doing.
Sorry.
Right, so again, the staff recommendation is to approve the rezoning request with the condition, that any improvements are going to have to kind of run through DRC, through our typical process. Again, recognizing that building will need some work if you start making, substantial improvements or modifications to it, that the building and the site will need some additional work. Yes,
Right, but it doesn't sound like our applicant is like, no, as long as it's squared off, got some concrete, and I can kind of start rolling and moving along with my family business. So.
Right. I do believe Mr. Johnson has been in touch with the applicant and has expressed the concerns that staff does have, with the current condition of the building and the site. So I do believe that she is aware of that, as she has expressed, and the staff has kind of expressed through the staff report and subsequent conversations about the concerns that we do have about the building. But as I said, we've talked to a number of folks about many potential uses in that property, and there are constraints with that property
Yes.
that make it usable at this time.
Okay.
So we recognize that it is moving a viable use that is reasonable in that area into that space.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. Appreciate it. And thank you to the applicant. And Madam Vice Chair, I'll yield.
Thank you. Are there any other discussion? Commissioner Robinson, you have the floor.
Yeah, this is, I always like these conversations, just from the perspective that the thought we go into small business versus big, giant economic projects. And I recognize that when citizens come out, there's two reasons that they step up and speak. Not in my backyard, and if I'm ideologically opposed to something, so I get it. I understand. But in listening to the context of this, and I want to bring clarity, the applicant does not own the building, yes or no?
That's correct, sir. She does not own the building. She would just be leasing space in the building.
She's just leasing space. She's not doing any commercial improvement outside. No, it's just inside, whatever she's going to do, correct? Yes or no? I just need some
Yes,
yes or
sir.
no's.
That is correct. She will just be leasing space
I can't
inside
see
the
you.
building.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
All right, thank you. Last is, so back to the buffer, I heard it, but in context of everything else, even if I put bushes back there, fence may not do what y'all think is going, you need something that's going to have some density. That would still trigger, yes or no? The DRC, if you put bushes, I don't care what they call, Henry would know better than me, or Commissioner Alcaraz, but bushes, no?
Any site improvements that would be
It triggers.
required would be something that we would send over to the DRC, and they would kind of weigh in on whether or not the type of bushes, where the landscaping, how they're planning and things of that. So anytime you start making changes to the site of a commercial or industrial property, that automatically sends it over to DRC.
Yeah, and see, DRC, I mean, this is, for me, this is where we make government too hard for small business to thrive. This is when we build bureaucracy to just like, okay, really, guys, this ain't that big in the context of things that we know as a planning and zoning and the Board of Commissioners. And so sometimes like, okay, guys, are we going to burn this? Or are we going to allow this to like, okay, come on. Right? We can put it just because we can, but it's like, okay, come on, guys. It's not could we, but should we? And can we be righteous about how we wield our power to make decisions? And can we be consistent and give it equitable? And so I'm listening to this like, okay, so for the, where I have no opposition to the recommendation by the Planning and Zoning, as long as the applicant is very clear on expectations, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Let it be the will of the board. Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you. Any other discussion regarding this item? If not, I turn it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Planning and Zoning Board, you've heard the discussion. Do I have a recommendation on Z 2023-20?
Mr. Chairman, this is Kurt Nicholson. I make a recommendation that we approve Z 2023-20 as read into the record by staff with the conditions as stated.
This is Teresa Knowles. I second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Do we have any discussion, Planning and Zoning Board?
I have a quick discussion for you, Kurt. Would you be opposed to adding a condition in there that we add that some type of buffer, just consider the neighbors?
Yes, I would be opposed to that.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more discussion?
I would be opposed since the applicant doesn't own the property. It doesn't make sense for the applicant to have to do that. So, thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call on the vote to approve Z 2023-20 with the findings and conditions that were read in the record. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Madam Vice Chair, I'll throw it over to to the Board of Commissioners with a unanimous recommendation to approve Z 2023-20.
Thank you. Board of Commissioners, you have heard the applicant and staff regarding application Z 2023-20, and the Planning and Zoning Board has approved it unanimously. Do I have a motion regarding Z 23-20?
Before making my motion, Madam Vice Chair, was there a condition added to that motion? Or was
There
that
was no condition.
That was, okay, just want to make sure. Okay. I'd like to make a motion on item Z 2023-20 for approval. That's it, for approval.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I have a motion and a second.
I'm sorry, may I just ask one point of clarification?
Sure.
There was the condition as presented by staff, but then there was not the condition added for the buffer. So is your motion to approve with the Planning and Zoning Board with the condition by staff, if I understood from Mr. Nicholson? So there was the condition by staff.
Okay, let me rephrase my motion of approval with staff, but not what the planning and zoning stated. That's all I want to make sure that wasn't.
Just wanted to make sure we understood for the
Correct.
record,
Yes.
so this is the staff condition, that the applicant would have to go to DRC, if they're making any changes to
That
the
is
site plan.
correct.
So that is your
That is my
approval with the
motion.
condition, but
Yes.
not the additional condition requiring the buffer.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you for the
appreciate that.
correction.
I
Yes.
apologize for the.
And Madam Vice Chair, if that's my motion, basically.
Your motion is to approve it as it was sent over with conditions by the Planning and Zoning Board.
That's correct. That is correct.
And the second stands. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion regarding this item? If none, all in favor, please raise your hand. We have a unanimous vote, and the motion carries. And I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Ms. Duncan, would you present our next item, please?
All right, great. Thank you. This item is Z 2023-21. This is a request for rezoning from residential agricultural to light industrial. This is for an office and fleet vehicle parking located at 970 Douglas Hill Road, Lithia Springs, 30122, land lot 796, District 18, Section 2, and Parcel 4. The lot size is .80 acre, and this is in Commission District Number 2. So the subject property is located on the north side of Douglas Hill Road, just west of Factory Shoals Road. The subject property is somewhat wooded. It does have a driveway access cut to Douglas Hill, and it was installed during the intersection improvements that were completed by the repaving work that was recently done for the Prologis project just west of the site at 1000 Douglas Hill Road. This is in the Quality Growth Overlay District. I will show you that zoning map in just a minute. So any additional development on the property will be subject to the Quality Growth Overlay. There is an older residential building on the property. If that building were to remain, it will need extensive renovations. And in renovating that site, the applicant would need to be aware of the existing septic field and work around those locations. They may need a new soil test and on-site septic system installation if they do plan to use that site. And then any additional regulations will govern outdoor storage of materials beyond the fleet vehicle parking and would require a special use permit approval. So that is not under consideration at this time, but depending on the end user of this property, they may be required to come back in for an additional special use permit approval. So fleet vehicle parking must be screened from view by opaque fencing according to the standards of Article 8, as well as the additional landscaping requirements along the frontage that would be required under the quality growth overlay. And there was an adjacent property to the east that was rezoned in 2021 from RLD to LI, so in a similar situation. I'll go ahead and share the zoning map with you at this time. You can see that the subject property is that small area in yellow under consideration. It is kind of a remnant parcel in an area that has largely transitioned to light industrial zoning. That's the blue zoning that you see, and the crosshatched area is that quality growth overlay. This is an aerial view of the site where you can see, again, the considerable amount of industrial development that has taken place in this area. Here is the site plan submitted by the applicant. The proposal on this site is to renovate the existing property to be used for some sort of contractor's office with outdoor fleet vehicle parking. Just to clarify, under the code, this would not be heavy truck parking. This would basically be like pickup trucks, and trucks used for the work of like a contractor's storage yard or things of that nature. Here is the street view of the property. And again, the street view of the property, looking at the previously zoned property, that is that house with the fence in front of it that you see on the right. This was that subject property that was rezoned in 2021. And then this is the view looking north along Douglas Hill. Staff has analyzed the zoning criteria in the code, and that we do find the request to be substantially compatible with the criteria of the code. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the requested rezoning Z 2023-2021 with the following findings and conditions. The findings are: number one, the use will not modify the land use plan or the intent, purpose, or spirit of the Douglas County Unified Development Code. Number two, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive future land use plan. Categorization of this property is within the Commerce Center area, incorporating mixed commercial, residential, and industrial uses. Number three, the use will not negatively impact surrounding properties. Number four, the granting of the special use, the granting of the rezoning will not adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare. And then we also recommend two conditions on this property. Number one, any other use of the property not identified within Section 210, uses allowed in each zoning district, specifically Table 2.2, principal uses allowed by right, and 2.3, accessory uses allowed by right of the Douglas County Unified Development Code, may require the submission, review, and approval of a new special use permit. The applicant shall submit to the Development Review Committee for review and consideration of the specific site development and access management plans to address the development standards in the UDC and the concerns and requirements expressed in the specific agency impact statements reviewed in the staff report dated April 4th of 2023. And that concludes my report on this project. And if you have any additional questions, I would be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. At this point in time, I will open the public hearing on this matter. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application, including the applicant or the applicant's representative, please approach the podium. You would have 2 minutes per person for a total of 15 minutes. State your name and address first, please.
Yeah, I'm Ian Smith of 6655 Jenkins Road in Chattahoochee Hills. I'm the owner of the property. Basically stated, I want to do what the neighbor has done, turn the old residential building into a commercial spot. Everything in that neighborhood is light industrial already. We're surrounded by big warehouses, and I don't know if anybody would actually oppose this, as I don't have any neighbors who actually do that. So I'll yield and see who says anything.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Right.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Seeing no one move, I will close the public hearing in favor and open the public hearing in opposition. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application, please approach the podium. Seeing no one moving, I will close the public hearing on this matter. Planning and Zoning Board, do you have any questions of the applicant, the owner, or the staff?
Mr. Brandon Penham, I got a question for the applicant. I listened to the report, but I just want to hear from you. What's the exact plan of what you're going to do on this?
Like I said, a contractor like an HVAC specifically I have in mind to turn it into an HVAC, mechanical heating and air.
Okay, so you're not sure what commercial business would go here. You're just going to rent it out as a commercial piece of property for a company to come in.
Yes, sir.
And so HVAC is one of the options that you have on the table right now.
Yes, but a typical type building that's not no heavy trucks, no heavy equipment.
Gotcha.
We're talking pickup trucks, maybe straight trucks.
Okay. Yep, just wanted to get clarity on that. I think I'm good. Thank you so much. I yield.
Okay.
Okay, now also, before we go any further, you heard the two conditions that were read into the record. Are you in agreement with those?
I am indeed, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Do, or Curry, right here.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how much square footage of what you're going to put there? I know you said you're going to have a HVAC, but do you know how many square foot you're going to change it over to in commercial?
The house is to be renovated.
Okay.
In its existing footprint,
Okay.
which is, I believe, 1,300 square
Okay, so
feet.
that's just, you're not going to add anything else to what is standing?
No, sir. Just,
Okay, just-
parking lot and vehicle storage, and renovation of the house.
Okay, just renovation of the house. Okay, just wanted some clarity on that. That's it. That's all I have.
I see that you're gonna have fleet parking as well.
Yes.
How many vehicles do you feel that probably will be there?
I think in the plan it was up to 10. I don't have that exact figure, but what was on the site plan. But I think it was up to 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah, you mean, like bigger trucks?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, about 10, I
Right.
think.
Okay. That's all.
All right.
I have.
Good. All right.
Any other questions, planning and zoning? Hearing none, Madam Vice Chair, I'll throw it over to the commissioners for any questions you may have of the applicant or staff.
Thank you. Board of Commissioners, in regards to Z 2023-21, are there any questions for the applicant or staff?
None from District 2.
If there's none, I turn it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Planning and Zoning Board, you have heard the presentations and the discussion. Do I have a motion, please?
Mr. Brandon Penniman, I make a motion to approve application Z 2023-21, a request for rezoning from RA to LI at 970 Douglas Hill Road, Lithia Springs, Georgia 30122, with the conditions as read in by staff. Thank you.
Or Curry, second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving Z 2023-21, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. I will throw it to the commissioners with a unanimous approval for Z 2023-21 with the conditions that were read in and the findings by staff.
Thank you. Board of Commissioners, you've heard the vote from the Planning and Zoning Board to approve applicant Z 2023-21 with the two conditions and findings. Do I have a motion?
May I?
Commissioner Robinson?
Thank you. I make a motion to approve Z 2023-21 as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Board with its conditions.
I have a motion. I'll second it. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, I have a motion on the floor to approve Z 2023-21. All in favor, please raise your hand. We have a unanimous vote, and the motion carries. And I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, and best of luck to you there. Ms. Duncan, our next item, please.
All right. Okay, so next item on the agenda this evening is application Z 2023-22. This is Joaquin Thompson. The request is for rezoning from general commercial to residential low density for residential purposes located at 11751 Veterans Memorial Highway in Douglasville, 30134. This is land lot 733, District 18, Section 2, and Parcel 4. Lot size is 1.42 acres. Application signed by Joaquin Thompson, Commission District Number 1. So the site is on the south side of Veterans Memorial Highway. The property is developed with a single-family residence. It is partially wooded. There are no planning concerns raised by this rezoning request. If approved, all future development on the property will be conducted according to the residential low-density standards. So this is, in effect, a downzoning of the property. What I'm showing you here is the zoning map showing the subject property highlighted there in red. This was actually rezoned back in 1986 to general commercial for use as a restaurant. This is another property that we have had many inquiries over the years, for what could potentially kind of go into this space. Here's an aerial image on the property. One of the things that you will notice is in the corner of the property, there is a water body there. What was likely at one time an old farm pond is adjacent to the property. This is located in the Sparks Reservoir Watershed Protection Basin, so that does trigger the 150-foot setback buffer requirements for the watershed basin. Here is the plat of the property showing the existing footprint of the house. And then here is an image from Street View. So again, even though this was rezoned to general commercial back in 1986, it still very much retains that residential feel. Having unsuccessfully been able to locate any potential commercial uses, the applicant had approached staff indicating that it possibly may have a better future as a residential use going forward. So the application was submitted to rezone the property back to a residential low-density use. This would be keeping, with the surrounding zoning of the property. So here's street view of the property looking at the adjacent development along Veterans Memorial Highway. Staff has analyzed the criteria in the code, and we have found this request to be substantially compatible with the criteria of the code. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the requested rezoning from general commercial to residential low density with the following findings. Number one, the rezoning will not modify the intent, purpose, or spirit of the Douglas County Unified Development Code. Number two, the proposed zoning is consistent with the comprehensive future land use plan categorization of this property as within the suburban living area, incorporating mixed residential uses. Number three, the uses permissible in the proposed zoning district are specifically compatible with the surrounding properties. And number four, the granting of the rezoning will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare. And that concludes my staff recommendation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Duncan. At this point in time, I'll open the public hearing on this matter. Anybody, including the applicant or the applicant's representative, would speak in favor of this application, please approach the podium. You would have 2 minutes per person for a total allocated time of 15 minutes. Seeing no one, is the applicant in the building? We have no one to, well, at this point in time, no one wishing to speak in favor. I'll close the public hearing in favor and open the public hearing in opposition. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application, please step forward to the podium. Seeing no one moving, I will close the public hearing on this matter. Ms. Duncan, since we do not have an applicant or owner here to agree to the conditions, do we move on with the conditions as stated?
We are not requesting any conditions. We have presented some findings.
Just
right, but we are not requesting any conditions. We are just recommending rezoning of this property to the residential low density. No conditions.
Okay, Planning and Zoning Board, do you have any questions of staff?
Staff, quick question. What's your thoughts on the applicant not being present for a presentation like this?
I will double check the code. It does say that the applicant should be present or representative should be present, but I don't believe that it is a requirement that they are present for the Planning and Zoning Board and the Board of Commissioners to take action. The property has been correctly noticed. The sign has been posted on the property. The applicant is aware of the hearing date. We have been in communication about it, so they were aware that this was their hearing date. So I do believe that you can take action if you would like. That application can be approval, denial, or tabling of the item.
Does that raise any concern for you, the applicant not being here?
I don't think so. No, I can think on it. But again, if you would like to, defer this one to the end of the meeting and go ahead with the final application, we can revisit it, and I can just double check the code and make sure there isn't anything in the code section that requires the applicant's presence. But if I'm going from my memory, I'm pretty certain it says the applicant should be present. But in the event they aren't, the Board of Commissioners should still be able to take. Action. However, I always tell my staff, double, triple check everything in the code. Don't go off memory. So that's why I'm saying if you would like to push this till the end of the meeting, I'm happy to go back and put eyes on that specific code section and read it into the record if you would like.
Board, are you guys amicable to that? Waiting to push it?
I believe I see all of the heads going up and down, so if we could just postpone this and move to the next item, and then we can come back to this at the end of the meeting.
That's the will of the board.
We already had the public hearing on it, so.
So, Board of Commissioners, are you amenable to that request? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, take a position. If they're not required to be here, didn't call it.
So my position is that I always go back and double check the code before I cite chapter and verse off the top of my head. That is my position. That is what I tell all of my staff to do, is not go off of memory. So that's all I'm saying, is that I am more comfortable with going back and reading directly from the code, because to be honest with you, this isn't one of those things that we look at every day. So that is my position, is if you want me to say specifically what I would do, I will go back and read it directly from the code to make sure I'm certain, because that's a 700-page code and I do not know it word for word. So I'm happy to do that. If you want to not hold up everybody else here in the meeting while I look at it, that would probably be my recommendation, just to make sure that I'm correct about that.
All right, so I'm sorry that wasn't for you, but thank you for that.
Yeah.
That was
No,
more
again, I got to say
because-
this, in front of my staff, because I always tell them, always go back and double
Understand.
check when you think you know the
I
code.
understand. I got to move on. My point, though, is they're not here. Do we have sufficient capacity to make a decision without them being here? For me, it's downgrade. I get it. All right, this is not, there's no conditions. Okay, well, I mean, I get, you get to ask your questions, you got to get them answered. But for me, this one wasn't that difficult. So to answer the question like, no, I don't agree with that, but it's the will of my board. So I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson. District 1 Commissioner Henry Mitchell.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like for you to find out the finding of all that information that you're going to find out, and that way we'll know. But I would like to make a motion to actually, on Z 2023-22 for approval with the said findings.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve application Z 2023-2022, a downgrade from general commercial to residential low density. All in favor, please raise your hand. We have a unanimous vote, 4-0, and I turn it back over to you, Chairman.
But Madam Chair, just make sure though that, Vice
She
Chair,
will.
I'm sorry. Just make sure you do get the finding for everybody else to actually know. So in the future, when we run across this, we'll know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson, our next agenda item, please.
Yes, the next agenda item is Z 2023-23, rezoning, and please excuse me if I mispronounce your name, Altif Rana? Say it one more time. Altaf Rana. The applicant is requesting for a rezoning from CG, general commercial, to CH, heavy commercial, for auto sales located at 3364 Highway 5, Douglasville, 30135. Before you, I have the zoning map. The subject property is highlighted, and it is currently under the highway overlay. Before you, I have the aerial image of the property. Once again, it is highlighted in yellow. And before you, I have the site plan for the previous business. The previous business was a Papa John's golf cart and go-karts. Their last business license renewals in May of 2021. The property was originally zoned for residential. It was rezoned in case Z1988-04 to commercial. This is the street view of the property. And before you, I have on the left, looking south on Highway 5, the subject property is to the left. And on the right, looking north on Highway 5, the subject property is on the right. And based on the analysis zoning criteria, staff recommends denial. It does not meet the rezoning criteria. And staff recommends denial of requested rezoning Z2023-23.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. At this point in time, I'll open the public hearing on this matter. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application, including the applicant or the applicant's representative, please approach the podium. You would have 2 minutes per person for a total time of 15 minutes allocated. Please state your name and address for the record before you begin.
Good evening. I have a request. I need a 2 bottle water. I just opened the Ramadan. It's 8 o'clock open. So I need a 2 bottle water, please. My this friend and here, I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yes, after 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Good evening.
Please state your name and address for the record first, sir.
Excuse me.
Your name and address for the record.
Name?
Your name and
Yeah,
address.
that's what I'm saying. Good evening, gentlemen, board. My name is Altaf Rana, reference to 3364.
Name and address.
No, name and address.
You're okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
3364 Highway 5 Douglas. My request was to rezone my property to CH so that I can use it for a car dealership purpose. The property across the street is also zone CH. I am from New York businessman with Douglas County as my second home, and I have always heard that this county is open for business. But unfortunately, that is not what I'm seeking. My goal is to revitalize the property as it currently is plain Papa John golf cart and go-kart, turn it to useful dealership for 50 years, and that service local. The purpose change has no negative impact in any domain and has many upside for the area. The application wrongly stated that it will be used for tow truck, which was mixed up by my broker. I assure you it will not be used for that purpose. When I bought the property, I closed within 3 days because of my trust in this county and the board. Many flexibility have been granted by this board to accommodate business and for the welfare of the citizen. I have been told that this board has the power to approve my case, and I promise you that it is in the best interest of citizens to do so. I request you all to consider my application for the rezoning and approve. And remember, I'm deaf. I wish you should have a closed caption, and I could answer as much you want.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application, please approach the podium. You also would have 2 minutes.
Hey, my name is Sam. Live in 2581 Coleman Circle, and would like to speak in his favor. I'm a used vehicle dealer in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and most of the time we have a customer across from Douglasville in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And what I believe, if you guys allowed to rezoning for a used vehicle dealer in Douglasville County, and it's pretty like every common person need the vehicle, and also if you guys allowed to rezone for a vehicle dealer, and we can have some more opportunities to sell the cars over here. Also for we can complete the people need as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application, please approach the podium. Seeing no one moving, I will close the public hearing in favor and open the public hearing in opposition. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application, you would have 2 minutes per person for a total allocated time of 15 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record before you begin, sir.
Yeah, my name is Mike Lamb at 1293 Heritage Drive, Villa Rica, Georgia. Well, thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. To start with, I've been part of this county the majority of my life. My family goes way back many generations since the late 1980s. So I've been here. I grew up here in Douglasville, and I want to continue to stay here. My office, I have a dental office, is located directly across the street from this property. I've spent my entire 35 years in practice at this location. I've built it up. I've landscaped it to the tilt, put a lot of effort into to make it look presentable. My goal is to stay here. I don't plan on retiring. I'm a proud father of a son who's in the Army as a dentist, and hopefully we can transition from me to him one day. I don't want to see this property change. To me, it's unacceptable. It's not coherent with what's around. There are plenty of offices, small businesses that will be affected, in my opinion, by upgrading this to a heavy commercial. And I respectfully ask that we do not change it and keep it as is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address for the record first.
Hi, my name's Pat Lamb. I am Dr. Lamb's wife, and I live at 1293 Heritage Drive, Villa Rica. Like Mike said, this property is directly across the street from us. First thing I would like to point out is Papa John's golf court business. I'm very familiar with it. We'll look across the street every day. It was a quiet business. There were no test drives coming out of that property. That's one big difference that would happen between a used car dealership and Papa John's. Also, there was, one of my concerns is light pollution, a lot of noise with a used car dealership. My main concern is people especially egressing that property for test drives. It's a very busy road. Like I said, that was never a problem with Papa John's. I do want to point out this heavy commercial rezoning coincides with the latest realtor, who's a planning and board member. I requested Mrs. Duncan here to have Thomas, his name's Rob Thomas, recuse himself, and I thank her very much for that. But what I have seen is the property kind of has been sitting there. A new big yellow sign came up across the street, Elevate Realty. The new realtor is Rob Thomas. And then suddenly we have a zoning for a new rezoning. As far as I know, heavy commercial has not really been a need in our area, and I don't think anybody has requested it. Mr. Thomas has demonstrated successful sales under the current zoning in our small community. Just a few months ago at 3382 Highway 5, he closed a property for $1.2 million. So he's very familiar with that area and kind of the nature of the community as far as being small businesses, and kind of knows what we're all about, I think. The sale and the commissions paid
Your
hinge.
2 minutes is up.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
I'm Phil Honeycutt, live at 129 TP Trail, Whitesburg, Georgia. I own Double Eagle Pawn Shop, 3347 Highway 5, almost across the street from the property in question here. I've been in business on Highway 5 37 years and plan to be in business another 20. I won't be but 102. But anyway, we feel like that the rezoning into what is proposed would be a detriment to the property along Highway 5 there, and it's going to affect taxes. We have a doctor's office, a dental office, a health care business next to me. We have a church right up the street, and we have another eye doctor up the street. And we have a residential area right behind our business. And I think that a heavy industrial zoning could affect their property values also. And while one business may not be a big detriment. If someone moves or sells property on either side, then you've got other heavy industrial area businesses that could come in, and this would it would affect the area property values. So we ask that you deny this proposal.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Michael Kay, 6971 Cowan Mill Road. I'm a veterinarian, and I have a property that's right adjacent or right beside this. Grew up in Douglas County, born in Parkway. My father had a veterinarian clinic over there by Hunter Park. Y'all probably have heard of him or know him. And I'm here and just built a house on Cowan Mill Road, so I'm here to stay. And my business is there and next to it. My 2 points really are, kind of sounds like, if I'm right, and I don't know if I'm right or not, but it sounds like if it goes heavy commercial, the property's worth more money. So if you buy a piece of property, you have a piece of property, and you get it switched to heavy commercial, it's possibly worth more money. And so I think, and I'm not real sure, if we've purchased the property and you try to move it and it doesn't move, well, and because there was huge for lease signs, and the owner did move the sign because we were getting a lot of phone calls asking us if we were leaving, and I called him, and he took the signs down. But my point of it is if it's not moving and the fact that it's going to lease, well, then you go through the motions to get it turned to heavy commercial, and you can either sell it or do this. So that's my first point. My second point is, and I hate to say this, but a lot of times you get car dealerships, used car dealerships go under, and so the next people that are there, what happens then? And so pretty much that's it for the next tenants, if there are next tenants. So thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this application?
Good evening. My name is Connie Hartley. I live at 8540 Nolan Wood Lane, Villa Rica, Georgia, 30180. I own the property next door to this parcel, 3368 Highway 5. In that building, I have two service companies, a plumbing company and an exterminator, and I have offices that I rent to people like bookkeepers and accountants and things like that. My concern, I have several concerns here. One is I have no idea what level of noise might be coming out of a used car lot. I don't know what would be on the used car lot. Would it also include motorcycles? Would it include a speaker, amplified music, a buzzer system, a machine shop to fix things that could make a lot of noise? These are permitted under heavy commercial. This is, to me, not a heavy commercial area. To me, that seems wrong. I mean, because we have very quiet, not heavy commercial type properties. And so if for some reason this was rezoned on a permanent basis to heavy commercial, and then the owner pulls out, it's still heavy commercial. And I have no idea what would go in there next. So I'm concerned for my own tenants there. And long term, I just think that is probably not the right zoning for that area. Having said that, I have no objection to a car lot, used car lot. I'm just concerned about the sound that's permitted under heavy commercial and other things that might come in behind it. That's it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing no one else moving, I will close the public hearing in opposition. Planning and Zoning Board, do you have any questions of the applicant or of staff?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question or two of the applicant. I have questions for you. How do we do this?
Have them come to the front.
What is the answer?
What was your question?
First one is it your intent to sell used cars?
Right. So,
English.
yeah, it's a used car lot, not a new car lot. It's a used vehicle dealer.
Okay. Do you have a dealer's license?
Yes, we do have a dealer license. We are serving already in the Lawrenceville County.
Oh, I got that from you, but I didn't know if he had a license.
No, he's just a property owner, try to get the rezone, the property, and start some business over here.
Is it your intent to do any service work on this lot?
No.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions, Planning and Zoning Board? Hearing none, Madam Vice Chair, I'll throw it to the Board of Commissioners for any questions you folks may have.
Board of Commissioners, do you have any questions regarding this applicant Z 2023-23 for the staff or the applicant?
Yes, Vice Chair. This is for the applicant. It's going to be for the gentleman who actually owns or is going to be putting the dealership there. So you have because I know a lot of these car dealerships, they do bring those cars in. If something's wrong, they do have mechanics on site to fix and repair those cars. So there's going to be absolutely no mechanics.
Okay, so there is no mechanic for people, like common peoples, or for everyone. Just there is just if they hire the mechanic just for their own vehicles to fix. Little bit, it's not like fully mechanics. Most of the time, we'll bring the cars in, just clean it up, and just minor works, little damages, and we can fix it up and sell it. There is no any like a noise or nothing, major noise or too much mess involved in this business.
So no paint shop, no touch-up paint shop?
No, there is no paint up. Most of the used vehicle dealer, they don't hire a paint job mechanic because it's much expensive for them actually if they hire a just paint job mechanic, and they just always do outsourcing for this kind of work.
Okay. And my next question would be for Allison. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So as I was looking at the overview plan, so this actually backs up to two residential properties, am I correct? Yes.
It does. It does back up to a residential neighborhood.
Okay, and that's there with Publix and I believe it's Publix, and that's a Wells Fargo, and all on one side. Then I'm aware of I know that the building, I think it's Mrs. Hartley's building to the other side. Again, your recommendations for the reason why this does not meet the rezoning recommendations criteria, or any other reasons why you would think that this heavy commercial would not be suitable for this area?
I mean, the staff recommendation is to deny because we think that the property is currently zoned as viable, right? So we think that the general commercial zoning is a suitable zoning classification on the property. If you look at the adjacent zoning is general commercial. And so we think that it is a suitable zoning classification based on the adjacent uses. As we've identified, a number of the uses in that area are things like grocery stores, nail salons, hair salons, places where you kind of generally go to run your day-to-day errands. They don't skew towards like heavy contractor yards, repair areas, and things of that nature. So when we looked at this use and we analyzed it against the other uses on the corridor, this use would have been an outlier in an area where we think, based on the surrounding uses, the general commercial is a viable zoning use on the property. So staff's recommendation is denial of the request based on the viability, of the current zoning on the property, subject to the surrounding uses and the criteria in the code.
Okay, all right, that's all I have. I'll yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Planning and Zoning Board, you have heard the discussion. You've heard the recommendations from staff. Do I have a motion on Z 2023-23?
Mr. Chairman, this is Teresa Knowles. I make a recommendation to deny Z 2023-23, a request to rezone from general commercial to heavy commercial for 3364 Highway 5, Douglasville.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
This is Frank Payne, I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion, Planning and Zoning Board? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the question. All in favor of denial of Z 2023-23, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Madam Vice Chair, it comes to you with a four-person recommendation for denial and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. Board of Commissioners, you've heard from the applicant and the staff regarding Z 2023-23, and the Planning and Zoning Board recommends denial. I will accept a motion at this time.
Madam Vice Chair, I'm going to make a motion to deny Z 2023-23 for not meeting the rezoning criteria and due to the inconsistency to matching the businesses around. This is for the request for the rezoning from general commercial to heavy commercial for the auto sales located at 3364 Highway 5, Douglasville.
I have a motion to deny. I'll second your motion. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Robinson.
Yes, just one point. Douglas County is open for business. And one of the things that in being open to business that with the 4 commission districts, which we all represent, have very different character areas. This might have been compatible out in District 2, where I'm more industrial, more heavy, more looking. It's more forward. The area that I'm hearing we speak of is like, oh, I don't know about that, but that's a local rule of the commissioner over there. How would you do that? Would you put that right there? I get it. It's not a right or wrong, but it's just more about it's choice is about location. So one of the things I suggested as you consider these things is that you got to feel the area out and where they're wanting to take it, right? You can't slam dunk. You can, but you have to go through this process. So it's one of those like, oh, I get it. I hear those guys, but it's like, oh, me, I probably would have had a different position out here, but mine is already built out. So I've got different decision making. But again, I just had to make that comment that we are open for business, but again, learn the character areas of where you want to go. Make sure you line up with decision makers and stuff because their voice does matter. I yield, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? At this time, all those in favor of the motion to deny application Z 2023-23, raise your hand. 4-0 unanimous vote to deny the applicant, and I turn the meeting back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Having nothing else to come before the Planning and Zoning Board, nothing else on our agenda tonight, I'll declare the Planning and Zoning Board meeting adjourned and throw it back to you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Board of Commissioners, if there's no further business to come before the board, this meeting is adjourned.